Virgo 27, the Grande Dame tea. The Grande Dame, I don't know how to say it properly. Grande Dames doesn't seem right. I think it's a French phrase. These are aristocratic ladies, or upper middle class at least. And they've learned how to drink tea properly. And they use the pinky to accentuate the fact that they're better than the hoi polloi, the rough, those who can't afford to go into tea shops. This is the image here. They represent society with a big S. They know how to do things, how to dress, how to speak, how to drink tea, and when to take tea and when to have their cakes and what not to do and so on. And it's a very, very definite ritual. It's very much more present, I would say, in Europe than it is generally around the world. And it became appropriate during a certain period in our history to demonstrate that you were of a certain class, that you had inherited wealth, you had inherited culture and breeding, and that you could demonstrate this around the salons of Europe. And on the one level, this is offensive to our sense of democracy and equality. But there is another level to this, where a tradition is built and it's passed on from generation to generation. And this establishes a stability and a security. We know how things are done. So not only are we saved the burden of reinventing the wheel, trying to discover new ways all of the time. It's very tiring. And it doesn't settle our community. What settles the community and uses the least energy to do so is to know how things are done. And we learn that from our parents and our ancestors generally. We are taught how to carry on the tradition of who we are on that level of society. Now, for good or evil, we're not the same as other cultures. We might be Christian, we might be Muslim, we might be Native American, we might be Chinese, we might be Hawaiian. But whatever we are that. And in a sense, we are that first. If we don't do very much to break against the tradition, we'll be the representatives of that tradition a generation later. If we're rebellious of spirit, and all of us are to some extent, then we go against our culture. But in fact, by pushing against our culture, we energize the push. So even our rebelliousness actually depends upon their existence, the existence of something to push against, our tradition. You don't really have a chance to develop unique identity unless you're putting it in the context of not being the same as everyone else. And if everyone else is actually different from each other, then what are you pushing against? There's no mainstream, boring, middle of the road, this is how it's doneness to push against. So in a very strange sense, these representatives of the worst imaginings of our inability to express ourselves uniquely, these representatives of the people that tell us this is the way to be, and if you don't do it this way, you're less than us, you're wrong. Nevertheless, they give us rebels the juice we need to be who we are, rebelliously. Now, the other side of this is that the qualities that are presented in society, they may be distortions, but they appeal to the highest in a personality. So the qualities approved of by society are such things as honor, integrity, truth. These qualities are good. They're not wrong just because they're practiced hypocritically or badly or abusively or distortedly. The qualities themselves actually live on as that which defines who we want to be. It's an idealism. It's a way of saying, look, that's the correct way to be. And the aristocrats represented that, and then it became the upper middle class. And eventually you have this phenomenon where working class people like to make themselves into middle class people by buying houses and such like, because they're aspiring towards that status and the qualities that go with that status. It's how we establish the commonality of our personality. Of course, our personality has a unique quality, but of course also it has a traditional quality. It's no good to say that you're completely unique. It's just not true. You're very much like your parents, very much like your peers, very much indeed. And until you compare it to somebody from another continent or another religion or another planet maybe, you don't really get how similar we all are. We all pursue the same ambitions. We all pretty much have the same beliefs about the nature of reality. And to go against that, to rebel against that, takes a lot of oomph, takes a lot of energy to move against that. And only when we find that energy can we establish the uniqueness of identity by not being like the grand dames at tea, taking tea. And one of the things that we need to notice also is that these old women, they're taking tea. It's not very special. They do this every day, and everybody else does it as well in a different way. We're not talking about behavior which is only accessible to the rich and well-connected. We're not talking about a ball. We're not talking about a holiday on some special yacht. We're talking about taking tea. And we all take tea, or we could. And this aspect of the teaching here is to look at your particular details of life, the everyday things that you do in an ordinary day, every day of your life. Look at them and see if you can turn some of them into a ritual. Because the ritual quality is inherent within the development of a person. It's inconceivable, I think, to develop very far unless you understand what ritual is. Ritual is something made special, made sacred, actually, by the attitude you bring to doing something ordinary. So you may be sure that these old women, they dressed up in their best. They put on their best dress and they used their best crockery out of which to drink the tea, because they wanted the ceremony of tea drinking to be sacred, as indeed it is in other cultures like China and Japan. So we're looking at ways perhaps that we can ritualize our ordinary life to make it more special. Because this is what you've chosen to do with your life. This life that you've got is an expression of something really profoundly important and creative with you. Why should it not be made sacred? And not only at Christmas and at Easter, but at, every day. Make some part of your day very special. Ritualize it to make it important. And then you'll understand that you also have importance, and you're passing on the tradition of your class, your people.